Fourth day on the same pair of verses. Canto 10, chapter 15, no, excuse me, Canto 11, chapter 11, texts 23 and 24. And the translation reads, you've heard it many times, Krishna speaking to Uddhava, a person with natural faith should constantly hear topics about me, should sing and remember my topics, which purify the world, and enact my exploits in birth, means dramas, indicating Krishna's pastimes in his birth. He should perform dharma, kama, and artha as service to me. Having taken shelter of me, he will attain permanent bhakti to me, whose form is permanent. There's a term in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that is worthy of a whole session to describe, particularly for householders. So there's a few householders in our community. Aropa Bhakti, Aropa. And don't ask me to explain it more because I'm just going to say something simple. It's it's to not lose the presence of bhakti in your working and worldly duties of life. It's a teaching that Rupa Goswami gives that's very similar to what Krishna is saying here, Dharma Artha Kama, dedicated to service to me, which is not so dissimilar from Yad Karoshi, Yadasnasi, etc. Madarpanam. But it's it just has some language that's not commonly taught in ISKCON, because what's taught in ISKCON is this, the Bhagavad Gita verse and what Krishna is saying here. We read it yesterday, the dedication of Dharma, Artha, and Kama. And there was a question, does this Artha mean just spiritual wealth? It means material wealth and also spiritual wealth, both, dedicated to service to Krishna. So for the context is the previous, this is from our discussions yesterday and day before. Bhakti that's mixed, bhakti that's unmixed, and then those that aren't in the unmixed bhakti, these recommendations to get there. To get there is that which colors the mind, karmatmaka yena sharira bandha. That's Rishabdev's teachings. The coloring of the mind that is due to affinity for the temporary. Engage that in a mood of detached service, Bhagavad Gita, Nishkam Karma Yoga. And by that, Nishkam Karma Yoga, that is dedicating the results of activities to Krishna, the mind becomes cleansed of that coloring, or the foreign substance that doesn't belong there. And it leaves a pure mind, and that pure mind, it's the doorway into pure devotional service. So these two things, Nishkam Karma Yoga and hearing and chanting about Krishna's topics. So the reference to this verse, or 23-24, is found in Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 15, 1-15. Reads, who will not develop attraction for the topics of the Lord, remembrance of whom like a sword will cut the knot of karma. You familiar with that verse, right? The sword of knowledge, or the sword of remembrance, not just knowledge. Remembrance of whom, like a sword, will cut the knot of karma. Commentary. Now this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. The qualification for bhakti, this is now, in the commentary, it goes ahead to chapter 20 of Canto 11. We read this yesterday, but these verses are important in understanding how to cleanse the mind, how to get beyond that stuck position where we're doing bhakti, but it's just mixed bhakti, or don't feel we're making much progress after some time. So, chapter 20, translation, text number 9, the qualification for bhakti is faith in the topics of the Lord. This is illustrated in the following verses. Quote, as long as one is not satiated by fruitive activity and has not awakened his taste for devotional service by Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, one has to act according to the regulative principles of Vedic injunctions. There's steps, I'm going over this slowly because it's one of those questions that comes up all the time. How do I understand what my prescribed duty is? And the answer is we know from Scripture, Guru Sadhu Shastra. So we need to know what Scripture says in order to know what a prescribed duty is. And it may vary from person to person, and it may vary from situation to situation even within one person's life. What's appropriate at this stage may not be appropriate at that stage, and what's at that stage may not be appropriate for the next stage. So this Krishna is describing to Uddhava one of the steps. So one of those steps is the awakening of faith in the tops of Krishna hasn't awakened yet. And as long as one is, could you turn it back up a little bit? As long as one is not satiated, like, Shanti. Somebody was asking about this, how does one experience peace? So fruitive activity is, I'm not peaceful yet. I got to have more fruitive activity. I have to go further in the corporation. I have to have a bigger house. I have to have something. I have to have. I'm not satiated yet. The mind is still colored by attraction to fruitive activity and becoming the enjoyer of the fruits of those activities. As long as one is not satiated by fruitive activity and has not awakened his taste for devotional service by Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, one has to act according to regular principles of Vedic injunctions. That means I want fill in the blank, and I want to become elevated. I want to be a civilized human being. That much. And I don't have attraction yet for the topics of Krishna. And so what do? The instruction Krishna is giving for such a person, there's vidhis, initiatas, and they're to follow them to become a civilized person. Civilized means, one who's an Aryan, one who follows the Vedas. So there's a follower of the Vedas means followers of Varnashram. You've heard this many times. The word Hindu is a misnomer. Really what the teaching is Daivi Varnashram or Sanatan Dharma. Either term, Daivi Varnashram or Sanatan Dharma. What does that mean? I have this situation, I have this nature, and I work according to that nature under the vidhis and nishedas, the do's and the don'ts that are according to my occupation, my varna, and according to my ashram. So I follow those. And then we have this teaching from Rupa Goswami. You know the teaching. Sarva vidhi nishedashur etoyor eva kinkara. What's the purpose of following the vidhis and nishedas? It's one thing. What's the one thing? Always think of Krishna. That's the target. That's the purpose of the vidhis and nishedas. So I'm not there yet. So I follow the vidhis and nishedas. But I should know, but if I'm studying the scriptures, I should know there's a purpose. The purpose is to come to that stage where there's an attraction for the topics of Krishna. And one who has attraction for the topics of Krishna, that person is eligible for bhakti. Until then, you're not at the bhakti stage yet. You're still, on the elevationist stage. Paragraph, quoting this morning's verse. A person with natural faith should constantly hear topics about me, should sing and remember my topics which purify the world. We read the translation. Then comes another verse in chapter 20, same chapter, Krishna speaking, but it's much later in the chapter. Having developed faith in topics about me and being disgusted with all karmas meaning prescribed, but with the intention of becoming the enjoyer of. He knows that all enjoyments are filled with misery, but he is unable to give them up. Still, with affection for me, now where did that affection for Krishna arise from? Hearing topics about Krishna. With affection for me, with faith and determination, small thing, faith and determination, he will continue worshipping me at the same time. That the faith is that affinity for in being the enjoyer of the temporary will fade or will become cleansed. The contaminations of the mind, the fruitive coloring of the mind, which doesn't permit me to see and fully relish the topics of Krishna and Krishna, the object, it'll become cleansed in course of time. So I stay fixed with faith and determination in hearing. Topics about Krishna. That's from the previous verse. So what Jiva Goswami is doing, he's going, for his audience, he's going way back to this important verse, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 15, that affinity for the temporary is cut by the sword of remembrance of Krishna. Now, it's commonly we hear by knowledge of Krishna. I mean, that's what's said in Bhagavad Gita. Knowledge of Krishna has the power to burn the reactions of all past deeds. But a symptom of knowledge is you act on it. Say it negatively. A symptom of knowledge is not you know something but you don't do it. That's a symptom of complacency. And then it means you don't really know it. You haven't really understood it. It's on the head platform at best. But those things that are in the head, at best, when practical life goes on, it's not how you live your life. It's when you're in a contemplative mood, that's what you contemplate. But when you live your life, you're just busy being busy. So a symptom of real knowledge is this remembrance. and you carry that remembrance with you. And in that carrying that remembrance with you, there's attachment to Krishna. Because we're that... Here's a simple practical experience that I've seen over and over and over again. Somebody comes to whoever they come to, someone who they look up to. I'm dealing with this problem. Here's the problem, XYZ. What should I do? And in the course of the dialogue about what to do, there are some ideas, and of the ideas, one of them, it becomes like takes the top position. I can relate to that. Next, one forgets the teacher and runs off in the doership mode. And what happens after time is they forget. They forget the relationship with the teacher and even the teaching, because there's a mitigation of the problem, and now it's back to business as usual. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The culprit is the doership mode, or you can say it the other way. It's the absence of connectivity with the teacher, and the connectivity with the teacher is the doorway to connectivity with Krishna, who's the source of the teaching. Your Krishna connection is lost by the doership mode, and we're very accustomed to it. And then after some time we stop doing, because whatever, the problem is over, or false ego has taken over, and I just forget. I forget who I am, I forget who the teacher is, I forget who Krishna is. I'm back in, the pool of fruitive activity. And it takes a while to realize I fell in the pool again. And then so instead of the doership mode, there's the bhakti mode, where one doesn't forget the teacher, and who's behind the teacher is Krishna, because the teacher is the doorway to Krishna. So, continuing, this is still Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 15, commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. How does that faith arise? This verse answers. Remembrance of the Lord is a sword. Equipped with that sword, asina, persons cut the bondage caused by the knot of false ego, which ties one up with karma. So the doership mode, another way of, it's fruitive activity, that's one way to describe. It's chasing the objects of the senses, which is fruitive activity, doing something to get something. And, behind that is false ego. He's in the driver's seat. And behind the false ego is misuse of free will. The primordial turning our back to Krishna, or indifference to Krishna. Even before the turning the back to Krishna is indifference to Krishna. With the I want to enjoy spirit. Boom, 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 boom. So how does faith arise? Remembrance of the Lord is a sword. Equipped with that sword, persons cut the bondage caused by that. So the remembrance comes from the hearing and chanting. In a qualitative way, of course, not simply a mechanical. And then the cleansing and the awakening. That's the effect. Paragraph. Or another meaning is as follows. Interesting. People tie up small amounts of money in knots in their clothing for the purpose of daily eating by dividing up their savings and spending a little each day. This knot of money for enjoyment is compared to the karmas allotted in this life for enjoyment. Thus, the sword of remembering the Lord cuts the knot of prarabdha karma. Doesn't mean you take that money that was in the knot of the cloth and you throw it away, but it's the spirit of enjoyment. And the remembrance of the Lord cuts that spirit of enjoyment. And without the remembrance of the Lord, the spirit of enjoyment is going to linger. Not just for a while. Lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. And then the modes of nature bring elevation or degradation during this and in the next lifetimes. So it's a duo of guna and karma. The karma is I want to enjoy. And then you get a reaction for that I want to enjoy. The objects that are meant for Krishna's enjoyment. It's a science. And how do you cut it? Remembrance. How do you get the remembrance? Hearing and chanting. Supposing you don't have attraction for hearing and chanting, then you follow the vidhis and the nishedas. And if you don't do that, you're an animal. I mean, two-legged animal. Paragraph. Who will not have attraction for topics concerning the Lord, whose remembrance cuts the knots of karma? Attraction for those topics arises suddenly, parentheses, in all people before having faith. Exclamation point. Krishna is attractive even for people that don't have faith in Krishna. Now there was a question the other day about what if you don't even have attraction? Some faith, that it's the mode of goodness tendency. That's where the vidhis and nishedas elevate one through the modes. And with the mode of goodness, I do because I know it's good for me. Now, it's hard to maintain doing something simply because you know it's good for you. But that's the standard. And without the mode of goodness, it's certainly degradation. And with the mode of goodness, then I do because it's good for me. It'll purify my existence. I do because it'll purify me. The verse indicates that a person who is more qualified, who has faith, will be even more attracted. In the final paragraph here, one should personally imitate pastimes with devotees, having one's particular devotional bhava among the pastimes of the Lord's birth and activities, and have others enact pastimes of the Lord and pastimes of other types of devotees. In other words, drama. One should perform acts like dharma. Acts of dharma, like giving cows in charity for me as part of Janmashtami festival. One should perform acts of kama, like building huge palaces on my behalf. One can make temples. One can perform acts of artha, such as collecting money, using it in the Lord's service. In this way, one should serve. Acharan. Having no other shelter, mad apashraya, one attains bhakti by hearing the Lord's topics. Bhakti, which is fixed in 3 phases of time, nishchalam, since one has no interest in impersonal liberation because of the happiness of bhakti. One should not think that because the object of worship is temporary, that the bhakti is temporary. The Lord is permanent. Sanatane. That's a phrase in the verse. It's a good education, isn't it? Very practical. Okay, here's a section from Jiva Goswami's Bhakti Sandarbha, Anuchit 72. And it starts, there's numbers, but it starts with this verse, this morning's verse 23, 24. My dear Uddhava, narrations of my pastimes and qualities are all auspicious and purify the entire universe. A faithful person who constantly hears, glorifies, and remembers such transcendental activities, who through dramatic performances relives my pastimes, beginning with my appearance, and who takes full shelter of me, dedicating his religious, sensual, and occupational activities for my satisfaction, certainly obtains unflinching devotional service to me, the eternal personality of Godhead. Paragraph. The commentary says, quote, this verse speaks of pure bhakti by a person purified to the level of Vishuddha Sattva by offering actions to the Lord. Next, Sridhar Swami comments, in this verse, the Lord describes confidential devotional service, which is eventually attained by offering fruits of one's work to the Lord, and which is performed by a person in pure goodness. Next, here the word abhinayan means the devotee portrays the Lord's birth and pastimes in theatrical performances. Here, dharma means pious activities such as giving cows in charity. And mad arte means when these pious activities are performed to celebrate great festivals in honor of my birthday and other days sacred to me. Kama means the desire to live in a great palace and other desires like that. And mad arte means when that desire is fulfilled by living in my temple in order to serve me. Artha means great wealth in my service. Mad apashraya means in one's heart taking shelter of me and no one else. Labhate nishchalam bhaktim mayi means he attains eternally unwavering devotional service to me, service that consists of many activities beginning with hearing about me. By tasting the happiness of devotional service, one treats impersonal liberation and other things with contempt or indifference. The object of the devotee's service is eternal and never changes or ceases to exist. For this reason, the Lord says he is sanatane, eternal. Here's another explanation of the same we just read. Now here's some comment by Rupa Goswami from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Eastern section, second wave, that's 1 to 15. There is a translation in the 11th canto in which it is said, 1128, if somehow or other, by good fortune, so that's this what's the phrase? Somehow or other. Yadrishi. No. Yadrikshaya. Yadrikshaya. Somehow or other. If somehow or other, by good fortune, one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such a person, being neither very disgusted with nor attached to material life, should achieve perfection, or will achieve perfection, through the path of loving devotional service to me. So that's a verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, here's Jiva Goswami's commentary on that verse. The Lord describes awakening of faith. Quote, so this is 11, 20, 27, 28. Having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all prescribed activities, varnashram, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. Paragraph. In the verse 11, 20, 28 quoted above, the word tataha means starting from the situation and thereafter. Bhakti is not dependent on anything else because it possesses its own great power. It is not like Gyan or other processes which are dependent on detachment or other things. However, it is dependent on indifference to karma. Nirvina sarva karmasu. In order to bring about exclusive concentration on the Lord. So this is saying the same thing as we've been hearing. If the mind is clouded with a desire to be the enjoyer of fruitive activities, or the objects that come from those fruitive activities, then the mind can't be fixed. It's chala, or, distracted chanting, because of the mind it got that coloring or contamination or infection. Prabhupada uses that word sometimes, infected with the modes. But when that, so the somehow or other, by good fortune, yadrichaya, becoming attracted to the topics of Krishna, then that coloring, that infection of the mode of passion, frankly, or literally, I want to be the enjoyer, fruitive intention, becomes minimized and eventually cleared. That's the medicine, the hearing and chanting medicine. Such an inclination is suitable at this stage of bhakti. However, it is not necessary in the higher stages, such as that of the Atmarama, when indifference to material goals has already been achieved. Vishwanath's commentary on this same verse, this 11:28, somehow or other, by good fortune, one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories. His commentary: a person develops faith, jata shraddha. This is an important phrase that comes up in a number of places. Jata shraddha, developing faith. Jata shraddha. In topics about me, by merciful association with devotees, yadrichaya. That is the meaning of yadrichaya in this verse. Since it is according to the use of the words in the first canto, where it indicates association with great devotees by that mercy. And the first canto verse is 119:25, and that's when Shukadeva Goswami suddenly appears, Yadrichaya, in the assembly by the banks of the Ganges, where Maharaj Parikshit is. He didn't get an invitation. and she showed up on, at the right time. He says, at that moment there appeared by his own will Yadrishchaya, the powerful son of Vyasadeva, who traveled over the earth disinterested and satisfied with himself. He did not manifest any symptoms of belonging to any social order or status of life. He was surrounded by women and children, and he dressed as if others had neglected him. The following verses show that a person who has faith in the topics of the Lord, mat kata dao jata shraddha, is qualified for bhakti yoga. An earlier verse in the same, in Uddhava Gita, chapter 19, so we're still on chapter 11, but he's looking ahead. 11:19, 20. Firm faith in the blissful narration of my pastimes, Krishna says. Or this verse, a faithful person who constantly hears such transcendental activities. So faith is essential ingredient. Faith is an essential ingredient even in material life. What to speak of spiritual life. Nati sakta means devoid of extreme attachment to body, house, and family. Na, nirvina, not detached, means if the person is completely disgusted with sense objects, he is qualified for gyan, not bhakti. If he is too attached to sense objects, he's qualified for karma. If the person is devoid of extreme attachment, then that person is qualified for bhakti. Thus, there are three persons qualified by three types of attachment. Disgust with objects is caused by purification of the heart arising from the practice of nishkam karma. The cause of too much attachment is beginningless ignorance. Nice phrase. Beginningless ignorance. Avidya. The cause of being devoid of too much attachment is the unexpected association with exalted devotees alone. These respective causes should be noted. However, there are seen cases of extraordinary qualification by unexpected association of the devotee. A person extremely attached to sense objects, Indriyavan, becomes qualified for bhakti. Like Mrgari the hunter or something. The last, this is it for this morning, and for the whole 23, 24, moving on after that. So this is 11:2:2. My dear king, in the material world, the conditioned souls are confronted by death at every step of life. Therefore, who among the conditioned souls involved with sense gratification would render service to the lotus feet of Mukunda, who is worshipable even for the greatest of liberated souls? So don't expect the persons too involved in sense gratification are going to want to buy a book or take interest in bhakti life. Don't expect it. It's it's not a new thing. It's not just a Kali Yuga thing. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Manushanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhi. Who's endeavoring for siddhi, or who can achieve it? How many out of all people? And of those who achieve perfection, how hardly one knows me in truth. So it's not just a Kali Yuga thing. So nonetheless, having understood all that, particularly for this age of Kali, under the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or recognizing the desire of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one tries anyways. We extend at least chanting and prasadam and, and opportunities to hear. And we're not discouraged if not too many people show up to hear. But certainly most people like prasadam. I remember taking part. There was 2 or 3 summers that we invited Madhuha to come to New York City for a whole month. Well, it was New York City and then colleges in the summertime. And we had permits from the city to set up, his, not the full thing of Madhuha's exhibits, but, a number of exhibits, changing bodies and this and that and the other thing. In all around the city. City Hall, Bowling Green, all the way down where the Staten Island ferry leaves, and, here and there. And it was really nice. And I remember a conversation. It was at City Hall. It's very near Wall Street. So during lunchtime, people from Wall Street go out. And they want to get out of their office and walk around when the weather's nice. So we had a lot of Wall Street people coming to our exhibit, hearing the kirtan, taking prasadam, looking at the exhibits, buying some books. And one man was sitting there eating some sweet and sour sabji. He looked at me and said, "You people don't have a good reputation. You should do more of this. Just, serve food. Your food is really good." But, it's not just the Wall Street people that have their opinion about everything. New Yorkers generally have their opinion about everything. Just ask them. They'll know something about everything. I'm proud of it. I was a little surprised, even some Indian people, not just college kids, but, they started coming to temple because of the prasadam. Not like they're lazy and they don't like to cook, but, prasadam is special. And it drew them, in temples for their Sunday program. It's very common. There's fewer people at the class. There's more people at the arti, and everybody comes for prasadam. It's common. It's perfectly okay, because that's part of our giving Krishna bhakti, is giving Krishna prasadam. And, there are some devotees that just focus on distributing prasadam. I know some householders it's not their livelihood, but it's something they do. And it's not just food for life, but it's, who's poor? Everybody that's minus Krishna bhakti is poor. That's Bhakti Siddhanta saying. So they have different systems of distributing prasadam. And different people do it in different ways. Some for livelihood, but others just because it's meaningful to them. So that's the kindness that is needed to bring people who have too much affinity for the temporary, is somehow the Yadrichaya association with the devotee. And of all those people, I met one of the so many, because the person in charge of Krishna lunch introduced me to somebody that graduated from one university, and where they have Krishna lunch. And he just got, he's not a sadhaka. He does some chanting and does some reading, so he's not like lining up to become an initiated devotee. He just has a lot of good feeling for Krishna and Krishna devotees. But it started from Krishna lunch. And then from Krishna lunch came Krishna talk. They have that language in Krishna kirtan. And for people that go to Krishna lunch, they give them a card for Krishna talk in Krishna kirtan. But it's how the Yadrichaya can awaken some attraction And now that attraction can, over a period of time, can become cold, using Bhaktivinoda's term, without association. So keeping association is important. And we encourage those that come forward to continue keeping association. One of the best ways is to be friendly and show, kindness and compassion and nice Vaishnava qualities, so people continue. Because when many people come to association, because they're looking forward to being with certain people, just social. They may come to the temple, and after the kirtan and arti and stuff, it's social time. That's okay. I mean, there's higher, but it's okay. And the social, ideally, is the person is giving, the person they're coming to see is reminding them of Krishna. It's actually a friend, not the other kind, the worldly hang out and talk about whatever's going on. We should be such association in a affectionate and friendly and kind way, so that the position of being, the affinity for the temporary slackens and the attraction for Krishna Katha strengthens. Somehow. Each of us are different, and the other people we interact with are different, but that's a service. On behalf of Krishna, on behalf of Lord Chaitanya, that's the Sankirtan movement. We can play our part. So tomorrow we'll move on to text 25. Let's see if there's some discussion. 5 minutes to 8.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for going into detail about the various steps of properly doing things, and also steps that I have to be careful about. One of the challenges that I have, and you have also pointed it out to me, that gap between being in the head and doing something from the heart. And you mentioned about keeping the focus on the teacher and the teachings while performing the activities. So my question is, is that the only one that I should be focusing on, or could I also focus on additional stuff to help me bridge that gap? And what are
whatever works? But whatever works must include this one. You leave aside the false ego, kartaham iti manyate spirit, and you take up the bhakti spirit. Whatever works. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. My question is, I think when we are gradually progressing towards the detachment of work, so I'm still attached to my work. So I'm thinking, if I'm aspiring for material prosperities, and if I'm prospering towards that, is because I'm still attached to work, will that bind me more? So should I not aspire for more till I get detachment a little bit?
Well, it's not. There's the work, and there's the fruits of the work. Mm-hmm. And the spirit is who is meant to be the enjoyer of the fruits of the work. And there's another factor that is reflection, self-introspection that says, this is where I am right now. And it's recommended that you be honest and that you act honestly from where you are right now, and that you aspire to go the next step. That's just speaking general level playing field principles. So on the one hand, simplifying, on the other hand, maximizing hearing and chanting. And when in the simplifying part, whatever it is, that there's this, the aspiration for the temporary, you try to dedicate that to somehow Krishna should be the enjoyer of it. If it's not clear, how do I proceed? Take something where it is more clear. For example, the parenting portion of your life, or the cooking portion of your life, or the cleaning the house portion of your life, and how that's meant, those things are meant for Krishna. I mean, let's just take cleanliness. It says cleanliness is next to godliness. But, some people, anyway, there are different intentions behind an activity. So focus on ones that are clearer for you, easier to discern, and then devote yourself to that which is clearer and easier to discern. Maintain cleanliness in the mood of, this is for Krishna. And then that mood of, this is for Krishna, will spill over to other features of your life. So, as far as career and your work, some people don't like their work. Some people like their work. Some people are indifferent to their work. But they continue because of the fruits. So consider ways in which the fruits can be dedicated to Krishna service. So one of the ways is charity for those that are in the earning position. It's not just, so I can have a bigger or a better something or other or more. It's, let me dedicate this to, and even those things that where it's, you're using financial resource for necessities, let those necessities be ways in which I can further my service to Krishna, whatever. So, if that intention is behind the work or behind the other things that you do in your life, the light will go on, and then the hankering for enjoying the fruits will subside. It doesn't mean you work less, but you just work for Krishna. And once that working for Krishna idea, light, spirit, becomes a little more vibrant, then you're quite detached from what the standard is for the enjoyment purpose, but for the Krishna bhakti purpose becomes, so, it's tricky, because we can deceive ourselves, or we can have our light on and then 3 minutes later the light's off. Or, a week later or a month later, the light's off. And there we are working in an attached manner. So the focus goes to the bhakti principle minimally in other areas, and then directed towards this one area. And the force behind it is this is Krishna's teachings, how we can get to him. And that's the long term. He's kindly giving really detailed instructions how to get to him. If you can't do this, do that. If you can't do that, do the other thing. Kind of instruction. It's outlined in chapter 12 Bhagavad Gita, and here it's like, several chapters. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So today in the lecture, I joined late, but you covered karma, bhakti and jnana.
Yes.
Along with that, you have included the dharma. So what is the definition of dharma or dharma? Where how it fits with karma, jnana and bhakti?
To repeat, maybe it's something that you missed by coming late. There's tendency. And dharma is to act according to tendency, governed by scripture. Dharma is simple definition. Dharma, laws given by God. And a religious person who follows the laws given by God, they're dharmic. So, of the three, some are inclined this, some are inclined that, some are inclined the other. Some are inclined for Gyan. And they should follow the Dharma for those inclined for Gyan. Some are inclined for work. They should follow the Dharma prescribed for those inclined for work. It's going to differ, and therefore it's a vast body of literature, because people have different inclinations and some mixtures. So, and Yadrichaya, somehow or other, either of those may come in contact with a devotee, and through that somehow or other good fortune, the attraction for topics of Krishna arise, and then that person is a candidate for bhakti, whatever their background may have been before the bhakti began, before bhakti was awakened. So dharma, your question is, what's the definition? And it's following the laws. This is Prabhupada's phrase, following the laws given by God. God gives laws. The state gives laws, and God gives laws. And we follow the laws. That's a dharmic person. So dharma for one person might be different than the dharma for another person. Now there's general standards for everybody. And that's, civilized life. And that's also like a substrata or foundation. So you can say the foundation is recognizing the injunctions of the Vedas. I'm not snooping into somebody else's business that has a different nature than I do. They're following, and I'm following, and someone else is following. So my dharma for me is specific. We can the definition is given here, specific to objects of the senses. What's your orientation towards the objects of the senses? There's the karma orientation, there's the jnana orientation, there's the bhakti orientation. And then, of course, there's gradations. And you follow.
So, means we derive that law, means dharma is there, so we
Given
will be
by God.
deriving means out of the scriptures, or it is written somewhere?
Oh, it's given. Dharmam sakshat bhagavat pranitam. That's Yamaraj speaking to the Yamadutas. Dharmam hi, certainly. Sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Sakshat Bhagavan. God gives dharma. And it's in a written form by Vyas. Before that, it's just in a spoken form, but it's dharma's codes given by God. The state gives laws. And you have to know what the laws are. You follow laws, you're a good citizen. It's simple. So that the access is scripture. And then we need teachers to help us understand scripture, because sometimes it's perplexing. And not only that, we're a little lazy. So we hear from teachers because we don't want to go through the trouble of reading all the scriptures. But then the teachers are going to say, you got to read the scriptures. And, and Prabhupada has made it kind of pabulized. At least, the bhakti science. In the bhakti science explains there's jnana and there's karma. But, they're meant, when the vidhis and nishedas are followed, it's meant to bring one to bhakti. So, that's it from the starting point. Now, the other teachings, it's right in Bhagavad Gita, that, the duties of a kshatriya. But then it's Sanatana Dharma. It's not just go protect people. It's under the order of Krishna. So, read Bhagavad Gita, and you'll have a, clearer sense. Behind you, there's someone? Yes, go ahead.
Krishna Maharaj.
Mask? Yeah.
So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja.
Yeah.
So here means what? If scriptures are there made by Krishna. And here Krishna is saying, you leave all the dharma and come to me. So is it something?
Sounds like a contradiction. Follow Dharma, don't follow Dharma.
Yeah.
How to understand that? Well, a simple way, there's different ways of explaining, but something that's really simple is the details are subordinate to one principle. The one principle, Mamekam Sharanam. So it doesn't, the indication is trash it. Put it in, there's a trash barrel, just toss Dharma into the trash barrel. Forget it, just surrender to me. No guidelines at all, just surrender to me. That's not the indication. Though the purpose of those things is this one thing, or the one thing governs all the other things. Is it clear or not?
So Maharaj, dharma
Okay,
is...
let me say the same thing in a different way. Same thing. You know what a chandelier is?
No.
No? You've seen things that hang from the ceiling and they have crystal and, there's lights and the lights go through the crystal and it's, really nice. That's a French word, chandelier. So what's a chandelier that's just lying on the floor? But if you suspend it from one piece, then it's very nice. So the crystals from which the light passes through, it diffuses the light in a nice way, soft light. It's very beautiful to look at, and the light is very soothing and pleasing, but it's dependent upon the thing that's hooked on. Without it, it's useless. So the one thing is Mamekam Sharanam, and all the others are suspended by that one thing. They're subordinate to that one thing. We don't trash them, but they're subordinate. And their meaning and vitality and attractiveness and utility, etc., is derived in that one thing. So make sure you do that one thing. And then you do the other things, but they're subordinate to that one thing. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Ah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Visuals. Okay, anything online? Nothing online. Look at that. We're done. Thank you very much, Prabhupada Ki. Zai.